Hey everyone, welcome to an extremely special episode of Grace at Night. I've been wanting to have these guys on this since the beginning of this show. Beau and Kelly Brotherton are in the house, better together homestead. Woohoo! Love these guys. Most of you probably know them. We're going to dive a little bit into their story, into our friendship, into just everything about life and homesteading and having 5 kids and having cows and stuff. But I think one thing
Five
that's
kids
really cool,
counts.
5 kids and cows, exactly. One thing that's really cool, and maybe this is a good place to start, is that Beau and I are both video people. And I think it's really cool that you took your video stuff and did something different with it. So before we jump into that story, in 1 minute or less, tell me why you guys are some of the coolest people I've ever known.
You were asking the wrong person to tell you in 1 minute or less.
I'll say it. I'll tell you why you guys and us are considered what you said. Because we're willing to not accept the norm and do something completely different, no matter how crazy people think we are. I think you gave. I think our families definitely snowballed each other. Like we definitely motivated each other. I think you took some motivation from us of just saying, like myself, of saying, hey, I can't do this current job because I used to work in the church, and I feel pulled to do something different. And then with us knowing that we were going to move out of suburbia and move to our property, they probably gave you some motivation to say, hey, I want to move to California and join a band and do this crazy, completely different, weird thing. And then I think that's pretty rad to say that I am not afraid to do something different.
Heck yeah. Yeah, that's and I think even before y'all's move out into the land, that was kind of the case because I remember meeting you, Beau, for the first time. It was in the lobby of the worship center back when we still had carpet. I don't know if you guys know, but we redid it. It's like
There's,
vinyl floor
I
now.
hear things.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's not carpet,
I know, right? But
like
I just
nowhere.
remember, no, it's well in the lobby at least. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you guys should come check it out. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, Beau and Kelly both were Grace Fellowshippers. Beau worked as the media director prior to my coming on as the media director in 2015. So we go back a long ways.
Well, no joke. I don't know if I know that I've told you this,
Hmm.
but like whenever I met you, Ben, I felt God say, "This guy is going to take your job."
Yeah.
In a good way,
In a good way.
like in the proper way, not like this guy's gonna undercut you and steal your job. It's like, no, you are going to be limited in this position, and this is the person that will take
Ben is an
this
asset.
this ministry to
Hmm.
where I was never meant to even try. So like
Hmm.
that's what
Wow.
was so cool whenever you and I met.
It's crazy because you know how you can look back on memories or things that have happened to you, but you only remember a couple of them. Like I don't know what or how my brain chooses which things to remember,
Yeah.
but I specifically remember you sitting like in one of the armchairs, and then Tony Stage sitting in the couch like adjacent to you. Just that image is forever seared in my mind because it was like a really transformative time in my life. And it's as I recall, it was a very transformative time in your life too. I think you were about to have baby number 3, and all sorts of other things, and I think you had been at least a couple months into listening and discerning this like move because of an article or a magazine, something that you saw, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell the world where you guys are, what you do, and how did that happen?
I'll let you go.
Yeah. So we're from the Houston area. Beau's been there, I don't know, all of his life. And then I settled there after school, and we really just put down roots-ish in Katy and kind of didn't know what that felt like until we got settled at Grace Fellowship. And then it felt like home, and it felt like purpose, and we got plugged into the nations in the prayer room and what it meant to be after ministry to the heart of God. And then in that time there, we really feel, especially after moving out, that was such fertile ground. It was like a lot of the prep work, right? It just set us up to be able to carry what was true and good out of Katy when Katy didn't suit us anymore. So we say this a lot, like the suburbs worked for us until they didn't. And we had these kids that were growing, and we started gardening, and we really just kind of started peeling back some layers on things that were totally normal, totally fine for us our whole lives until they weren't. So whether it was like, hey, we want to get into gardening, we want to get into homeschooling, or we want to get into living off the land, we were limited. And we found this property after just driving around. We looked in Fulshire, we looked in Richardson, we looked all over. And then we felt like God just said, go try these properties out in Central Texas. So we drove 2 hours north, and years later, here we are on this 7.5 acres just outside of the Austin area, and we're raising our 5 kids here now. And when we left Katy, we only had 4, and not that we could ever describe 4 children, but we had 4 kids. Now we have 5, and their ages are 1 to 12.
Wow.
We started a lot of prep work right before we ever left Katy. So that looks like creating businesses that would serve us even if we weren't in the thick of like a metro area. So our YouTube channel, and then we've got some other residual incomes that we put into place so that now when we're on the property, we can still work these jobs and create income, because that's the first question is like, how do you create income? And one of the key things that we did was we chose a totally alternative home to live in. At that season, I think back in 2015, when we first started thinking about something different, most of our friends were moving to a bigger house in a bigger community, right? Like a bigger, some people say McMansions.
Lifestyle inflation.
Yes, everything was getting bigger and better. And there wasn't anything wrong with that. But our family just felt a big resistance to that for ourselves. And it was the first time I think we were consciously considering breaking away from everything that we saw. So I think the steps were high school, college, jobs, starter house, family, bigger house, retirement, all, and then your kids follow the same path. I think a lot has changed in economy and the way that everything runs in general. And then when we were already out here, we felt this freedom, like, hey, we can teach our kids any kind of way of life. They don't just have to follow this path that we had been ingrained with. And living out here, we went the exact opposite, and we took a shed and converted it into a house. And now we have all of our people living in how much square feet?
It's about 800 square feet, give or take.
Small, but it's a small house on big land. So we went from 1/8 of an acre in the city to 7.5 acres, and we're just really now putting our thumbprint all over the place here. And it's exciting to get your fingernails dirty every day, and have cows to take care of. And we just had a pig with babies like last week, I think. So there's always this like way to reconnect, and it's something we couldn't have done if we stayed in Katy at the time that we were there. And I know everybody's story is different, but something we really wanted to do was like get back to tangible things. And I don't know how this whole conversation will go today, but Beau and I were just talking this past week. My parents were out here, and we felt really pulled toward like principles in our life. And I think something for our kids who are, the oldest is 12 now, but it seems like every 10 years, if not sooner, we're getting further and further away from like tangible things, right? So I remember when Everett was first born, it was like, he's our 12-year-old. It was like the hipsters we had the iPhones, but they were like getting like a phone receiver to plug in so they could like pick it up, or like getting into typewriters and stuff, right?
Right.
It's like this ache to get back to real things in a digital era. And so we can go anywhere in this conversation, but I think that's the biggest shift for us is, even though we create our income in a very digital heavy way, right? Even creating digital products online for the audience that God's brought us. The goal is we want our real life rooted in tangible, true things. I feel like you can connect to the heart of God so differently when you're really touching real things instead of escaping or imagining or desiring something in a virtual space.
Absolutely. And before I forget, everybody, here is their YouTube channel. You should definitely go after you watch this video because it's super
Yeah, watch
informative.
this one first.
It's amazing. There's just so much. It's not just like this is how we. It's really fun and it's entertaining and it's just a good watch. Probably better than 99% of the content out there on YouTube. So you should definitely check it out. If I remember correctly, one of like I want to say the catalyst for y'all getting out of Katy was because you couldn't have chickens in your backyard, right? Was that okay? That's a big deal. That's like, I don't know. I feel like if you're someone who wants chickens and you can't get chickens, you're gonna make a move. Like, I feel like there might be other little reasons like that normal people in suburbia might just shrug it off, but very, I think very importantly, this idea of tangibility in the digital era. Like, I'd love to leap a little bit more on that because you guys are YouTube stars. You're massive on social media. You're just awesome. I love sharing your content with people. But how do you find not the energy, but how do you find kind of the excitement in creating something for the digital realm that you might not want your kids to be absorbed in all the time, right? Like, do you feel like you're making compromises there?
Wow, that was okay. It went multiple. So for us, I mean, honestly, all of this started like Kelly told the full story, and she kind of omitted one crazy thing of when I lost my mind. I thought Jesus was coming back. I thought that the world was going to end back in 2015. I just now quit my job at the church, and there was this thing about the blood moons and all of the stuff. I thought that this was it.
Jesus is coming back. The world is crumbling.
Yeah,
it's on fire.
And so what I realized, that I was only like 5 years early. So I really felt a little vindicated in 2020. I was like, guys, I'm not that crazy, because in 2020 was when everybody was like, okay, Beau, we kind of get it now. We're locked in our house, and you get a little bit more space.
There were very interesting conversations.
Yeah. So that was just meaning that what I've learned since then, and I listened to this other podcast. It's called the Survival Podcast. I like the guy about what he talks about. I don't line with him for everything, but he has his tagline is teaching you to live a better life, whether times get tough or even if they don't. And that kind of resonated with me. I was like, you know what? I want to lean in, because whenever we started this, I had like all these different thoughts of what I would want this farm life, this permaculture life to be. And to be honest, it didn't align with my family in the beginning. I just didn't. I knew that there was a puzzle, and I'm not very good at puzzles. Kelly is great at puzzles and putting all the pieces together. I'm really good at saying, like, we need to move to somewhere else. Like, our life needs to transition. Direction. Yes. I don't know how to get there. And that's where Kelly and I partner well. So in terms of going to what you're saying about like creating digital entertainment, digital products or whatever, like a YouTube channel, Instagram, all that, it kind of aligns with like, what do we want our life to be without trying to, because we YouTube so that we can homestead. It's not really homestead. That's not the word. That's just a niche word.
If you look it up, yes, it's trending homestead.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
I would say. Very modern day.
I would say like we YouTube so that we can live this less stress, more freedom life in the country. Like, we want the slower pace of life. I'm not like, whenever we go back to Katy into the city, it's white knuckle. Like, it is a completely different, like, driving experience, just feeling experience about just being around that many people. That sounds really weird to say that, but we've gotten used to it of, yeah, we have to drive many more miles, but we're flying like 80 miles an hour. It's never bumper to bumper. Here, in Katy, Texas, man, it would take us 20 minutes to go from our house to the church. Because like at 5 o'clock, because of so much traffic there. So anyway, so being able to try to create YouTube videos or just whatever that our kids are willing to watch. Like, our kids, honestly, they love watching almost all of our videos. They don't like me yapping and talking too much, but whenever it documents what their life is, they love that. And we definitely are in the family friendly type of, genre content, and, none of our kids have any kind of social media.
I was going to say
they don't get free reign to watch YouTube or anything, which is weird.
Most YouTubers who do this as a profession, their kids aren't watching YouTube. And it's not because you're out of integrity. It's because anyone can do this. So you, just like any active parent, what are they reading? What are they watching? What are they listening to? And are you able to live a life that gives them principles and anchors for when they see, hear, or are present with something that doesn't align with those things, right? And I do think that we've built this life in a way that lives it so out loud. It's very like, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little, meaning we don't want to live this fake, like, insulated life where our kids know nothing about hardships that people they're going to do life with as adults experience, right? We don't need this vacuum, but what we do need is time. And we needed time to live our lives in front of our kids authentically, where they could see, like, yeah, parents do have to work. I remember funny moments where Beau would be gone for the day, like probably 3 or 4 years ago. He'd be gone for the day to Austin. He'd come back because we're just like, I thought you would never be here. Why do you have to leave for work? And I'm like, you guys have no context. Sometimes daddies and mommies will leave for entire weeks to go to work. So there's some ways in that where they just might not relate.
Which is crazy, because that's one of the reasons why all this started, was because I couldn't handle a job at the church that I had one day that I had to be somewhere. Like, one day out of 7 where I didn't have the freedom to do almost whatever I want. But
that's just the, like, are you in the right seat on the bus? And for an introvert with so many kids, you need those times to unplug. So that was absolutely a crisis for Beau, to, like, I need to come home from work and unplug, but at home, all my people need me. So I think that creating digital products that afford us a lifestyle of togetherness, of our family together, our school, obviously, like, anybody who homeschools and listens to this, you're going to know that education isn't happening from like 9 until 2 every day. It's all the time, but it takes a lot of intentionality. So it's kind of been a life hack for my laziness, because I don't get to opt out, right? Like, I don't just get to decide. And this is for me. I have this propensity to procrastinate and to be lazy, and I don't get to opt out of that for work or for parenting. I don't get to outsource and let my kids go somewhere, because then I just come home and I'd be on Instagram all day calling it my job. Instead, I really have to alter that. So it was a no-brainer for us that I would do a lot of online stuff with Beau, and we work better together, which is the name of our channel. And it became really like a staple in our life, which was, we wanted to be this full-time family. And that was the provision that God gave for us, is not to wait until we're in our 70s to spend all our time together, but like, let's do it now, especially if there's a way. So kids have folded into that. we still do a lot. Like one of our kids is learning to edit with Beau because that's Beau's natural
Which
background. Like,
one?
Well, they both boys want to
Uh-huh.
learn. I mean, they're the oldest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everett's a little bit more motivated to actually learn the skill.
Uh-huh.
Ollie's a little artist, man.
Mhm.
He's already drawing stuff that he wants to make digital stickers to
That's
sell.
amazing.
So like
Wow.
Yeah, the
they've gotten a
entrepreneurship.
lot of exposure to things that
Mm,
I don't think we would have had time for. And time also allows us to sit in the challenges of things in parenting without being rushed. So we are kind of anti busy schedules.
that's
And
amazing.
our kids take turns sometimes on who's doing what activities instead of everybody gets one, because we really treasure that anchor of home. Are
Mm,
we home? Are we eating together? Are we able, like, their favorite thing is when we're in a season that's really good and dinner's ready at like a reasonable time, not 9 p.m. when I find it in the summer. But like in our winters are our sweetest seasons because we'll light a candle and we'll sit around and we'll talk about our best and worst. A lot of like family foundational things we even picked up at Grace that we now apply in our real lives. And one of those things was that we would be that home base for them. And
mm,
and I think that that's really hard to see when they are all in their toddler years. So when
mm,
we're Katie, and our oldest was 6 when we left, and we had a 1-year-old. That's a totally different team that you're playing with than now when we have 12, almost 11, 9, 6, and then 1. So like
mm.
we're just in a totally different ball game, but I don't think your eyes can see that when you're that in the thick of, toddlers. Like
Sure. Yeah.
it's like you're just whack-a-mole playing to whatever you can, and instead moving out even just mentally gave us the space to say, like, what do we want to do with our time, and how do we decide that this, like, how do we decide what goes into our life creates an output that we're actually looking for and not just following along with t-ball and school and all the activities, which might serve some people well, but it
Mm.
just wasn't for us.
For sure. So I'm Bo, this is really funny. I remember going to see Marvel Civil War for your 34th
Yeah.
birthday, right?
Yes.
So I'm 34 now, and I turned 35 this year. Right? Isn't that crazy? And so I've always joked that in 2024 I'm gonna run for president because I'm finally old enough, and my entire platform is gonna be bicycles. I just think people need to ride more bicycles, and it's going to
Let's do
solve
it.
our healthcare problems. It's going to solve our traffic problems, everything,
Our
right?
stress.
Right. But realistically, like, how much better would the world be if we were just more present and we had more freedom and we were less busy with things?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's such a no-brainer, but it's so hard to do. Like,
Mhm.
why? Can you give me some wisdom on why that is, and how did
I
you escape it?
That's a good point. I'm not good at that. So I'm not going to say that I'm great at being present. We took a, personality test that kind of lists some stuff up, and my top one is futuristic. It means that I'm always the grass is greener on the other side. So
Mm,
I
Just
unfortunately,
like what's next.
yeah, I'm not great at being in the moment. I'm great at eliminating everything. I'm great at shutting everything down so that I can anchor our crew as much as possible. Like, I'm really great at that. But in terms of, like, I'm here with my kid and I'm not mentally thinking about all the things that I have to do the next day, the next week. That's hard for me. I'm very to-do list. So I would say that I wish I could do that. So
But don't you think that you've carved out, because you know that about yourself? I feel like I see you carve out, we're going to go to the pond. We're going to fish this
oh,
day.
absolutely.
Like, I think that even though you're going to have a list running, you keep it on your phone and then you focus.
Well, yeah, like I have, we have, but I've also, I don't know, I think I've taken a different role. So this kind of lets you know about how we designed our life. It was right whenever I had already left Grace or I was about to leave, and we had, 2, 3 kids, and we had a talk, and Kelly and I said, like, what is the most important? And I think we hit some financial issues. It was probably, I just left Grace. So, not having that steady paycheck and being solely on your own again, self-employed. And I ended up having to talk with Kelly and I said, what is the most important thing to you? And she said, financial stability. And I said, okay, great. So tell me, if that's the most important thing to you, why are you sleeping in until 9:30, 9:45?
And letting him take kids in the morning, right?
And she goes, oh. And it wasn't a, I feel guilty, I need to wake up at 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and be that, go-getter woman. No. It was, we both had we both like it was like we were seeing each other.
It was like, let's ask the real question. Is that really your motivation? Our lives aren't lining up with that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
If whatever we want to design our life for, but if you want the freedom to be able to sleep in, I will take the kids in the morning. And I want that life where I'm able to work for myself. I don't want to be a stay-at-home dad, but I want to be a work-from-home dad. And I want to lessen our expenses and live a different life that if we want to have baby number 5 and Beau takes the baby and all the kids for an hour and a half, which literally that's what we've been doing for the last year, is I take the baby and all the kids and Kelly gets 90 minutes to sleep in because she hasn't slept all night with the baby. We designed our life so that we can do that and we're not worried about money and we're not stressed out. We're not having to get to that next business meeting, that, next conference meeting, whatever. So meaning I understand what you're saying about, like, why can't you be present? That's what I've done the best that I can, is to design our life where, I like the word holistically, like things just work as our entire family, whatever it needs to be.
Yeah, I think there's a real temptation, especially in the city, and like you're asking, how do you get out of that? You kind of have to start peeling back the layers of what you know is true, and you just ask yourself questions. What do I really think about how a family works? Do I believe that the husband should be the head? Do I believe that, the wife should only stay at home? Do I believe that your kids should go to public school? And then start asking why. None of them are wrong answers. But if you're satisfied with the why, you stop. We were uncovering a lot of questions about why. Why do we value financial stability? What's financial stability look like? Can I achieve, like, my desired lifestyle with the financial stability that we have, which we were completely out of debt. We had no debt. So it wasn't like, we
had a mortgage.
Well, yes, we did have the mortgage, but we didn't have this pressure of school loans, business loans, all these things, because, and that's what I want to get to, is the because.
Car loans.
You're saying you've built this life. But I think that the misunderstanding is the life that we've built is not simply based on all this financial wealth that we had, right? The life that we built started before we were even married. So I remember having a moment in front of Grace Fellowship years and years ago asking, how did we pay off $30,000 in debt in less than 3 years? So there was this hustle that I think absolutely is important, and to hustle, like, we didn't ever want to owe anything to anyone. So that was the hustle that started back then. And then that drive continued when Beau was our primary income earner. And then there was a time where I was that primary income earner. And all of those things were like building blocks so that we were at a peaceful place financially, that was no longer the pressure. And I do think in the city especially, there's this temptation to run a 24-hour period and look to the right and look to the left to see what other people are doing. And then measure your success based on that. At the end of the day, how hard did you hustle? How much did you work? naturally, we live in the woods in a shed that we made into a house. And we are forced to see and smell and taste and touch the seasons. So at the end of the day, I might have slept in until 9, but that baby is safe and my husband is happy and my children still have time to be educated and exposed to a world of, like, we call it a feast. We set the feast in front of them and then they dine on information and education and experience. And at the end of that season is where we'll pause to measure. At the end of a 6 weeks or at the end of a 12 week, you have to retrain our habits away from this 24-hour cycle, sun up, sun down. And instead, what if we started in the evenings just resting? What if we rest in the evening and then we wake up after rest instead of staying up all night long? When we first moved here, we were all sleeping in one room. Our kids would fall asleep when the sun went down. It was the fall, so it was like 6 p.m. and Beau and I are sitting there like, ew, it's dark outside. Can't turn on a light. They're all sleeping right here. And that was while we were building the house out. And little by little, we certainly have strayed from going to sleep with the sun and waking with it. But I do believe the temptation of driving toward this common idea that we're all working so hard, and if you're not working as hard as the person next to you, you're failing. And that's just not biblical, and it's not even the way our bodies are wired. I believe so many things about your bicycle platform would pay off because we'd be forced to be alone with our thoughts. We'd be forced to physically exert ourselves. Even as a parent raising children, the power of a wheelbarrow is phenomenal for when we're wired and dysregulated and we can't communicate our feelings and all we want to do is scream. Go push something heavy. And these are things that we've only learned out of giving ourselves time. And it was asking questions that peeled enough layers back for us to say, why are we living this life that's disjointed from what we think we're actually doing? Do I really think financial stability is my goal when I'm sleeping in? That doesn't line up. So what if we built a life so that rest was how we lived our life? And that's wildly freeing.
Well, and it sounds like I'm saying that Kelly doesn't work. She works way harder than I do.
Of course, we all knew that, Beau. We all knew that.
5 kids, homeschooling, keeping it. Yeah, but just meaning that. I mean, it started, man, with Dave Ramsey and Mr. Money Mustache, like that. Just knowing that we wanted to create our financial life so that we could all be together. Both work from home, our kids can be schooled at home, and honestly, I just don't like leaving my property ever.
Right. I mean, it goes, where are all of your treasures stored, or like what's your treasure, right? And I think about that a lot. A question that I've been thinking about recently more often than I probably should is when I'm driving down Grand Parkway, especially, or down 1093, and where it used to be fields of grass. It's not now. I don't know how long it's been since you guys been, but it's just covered.
Is that going to Richmond?
Stuff. Yeah, exactly.
But, I heard that it's crazy now.
Right, but I think all the time, who's mowing all this grass? Like just up and down the,
Oh my gosh.
And I really think about it because I'm like, there aren't any goats out here. There's no natural landscaping happening. Like some dude or some group of dudes are spending a lot of money and a lot of time like taking care of this grass, and literally the only reason for it is cosmetic, essentially, right? Whereas you guys living out on the land, you're using your land. There's land, you're taking care of your land, you're working the land, and there's just something really powerful to that. Like, I wonder if the conveniences that were offered in modern day living in suburbia, like you're set in this trap, like where you can't actually get out of it because it just forces you to live in that way. It forces you to treat the land as something that's not, that it wasn't meant to be. I don't know. Have you ever had these thoughts? Have you ever had the lawnmower thought, right? Like who's taking care of all of this stuff, and like why am I not doing it?
I don't do an HOA. I will never I had a homeowners association. I think it is. I mean, we're getting sorry, Grace Fellowship. I think that living under the thumb of a completely optional government authority that tells you what you can and cannot do is the dumbest thing in the entire world. Because the fact that there is like a homeowners association, and that's what we're talking about, like Grace, no, I mean, we're talking about Katy, Texas, of like the suburban, like just life. Most of the people live in suburbia. You have an HOA, and Katy is beautiful. It is. You drive around. If you want to enjoy that beauty, then great. Then that's what it is. I just got to the point where I was like, I don't care about my grass being a certain number of inches off the ground. Our neighbor was told they redid their roof, and they were told that they had to redo their roof because it wasn't the right color.
What? Oh,
yeah,
man.
and we were a pretty like we were a small HOA.
Older community.
Yeah, older communities. Like it even gets worse. So HOAs, that's the reason why we couldn't have chickens. It wasn't because of the city of Texas. I mean, the city of Katy. The city of Katy. It was like Katy, you were allowed to have chickens. I believe it was our HOA that said that we could not have chickens. And here's the thing, even if the state of Texas were to make it legal for you to have backyard chickens, an HOA could say, no, you're not allowed to. So you have to, and this is what I talk about this a lot of time on the channel, is in government, no smaller government can ever remove the restrictions from a larger government. So if you have, a nationwide, you have the United States, they have their own federal laws that go for everybody. Then you have the state. They can't remove any federal laws. They can only add more restrictions, more state laws. Then you have your county. The county can't remove any state laws. They can only add more laws on top of that state. And then you got a city, and then you have the HOA. And there's like these blue hair, like old people just saying, like, what do we do? What is our purpose? Well,
let's add more laws.
Let's add more laws and tell them how long their grass can be.
Well, and I'll say in fairness, though, because of the system that a suburban house value all the things, you're not placing your value in your time and in your unless you're getting a monetary result. Like there is a lot of money driven motives when you're in the city. We absolutely live our life where we have to monetize things. We are not saying money is bad. I believe in absolutely wealth building. But I do think I keep hanging on your question, Ben, which was, how do you break out of that? How do you change your mindset in the midst of this? Because it's very difficult. We couldn't have grown a garden in our front yard, even though it was ample amounts of space for us to put in gardens, and our neighbors could have walked by and picked fruit from the trees that we had planted, but that wasn't allowed. And I think because we were in a system of let's make sure we can all resell our homes. Let's make sure nothing on the front of our homes depreciates the value of a neighbor, right? Those are things built around the objective goal of selling your home, the value of your home, so that you can continue to build wealth. My proposal is that that's not the best place to put your time and energy. If no one wants to buy my home in the suburbs and I have no other skill to live off of, what am I going to do? So this was an option, and it was the best time for us. There was no sense in delaying, but it was the best time for us to learn skills. Like my kids know what the garden is for. They know how cow poop helps the garden. They're aware of the connectivity that every living thing happens to influence another one right here on these 7 acres. The problem is the exact same thing is happening in the city. We just don't see it because we drive into our garages, shut the door, and don't come back out until we have to leave again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, living in Houston especially is like moving from one air conditioned box to another air conditioned box. Yeah, and you kind of miss, you miss that awkward interaction with someone in the street, right? Where life change, miracles, crazy things can happen. Yeah. So I did not grow up. Well, I grew up in a very conventional way in the suburbs, and I think my idea of people like y'all was that y'all are crazy people. You get, like who is this?
Alone, and it's like
Right, but y'all are totally normal and totally cool and like totally modern, right? And I think it's amazing to break this facade of like, what does it mean to live in the country, to be rural. But I think one of my favorite things about Katie, and I think to an even greater degree, this would be true for where y'all live, is that Katie was, not anymore probably, a pretty boring place. There wasn't much to do. Everything closed like at 8 p.m., whatever. But because of that, my buddies and I, we'd have to make ways to have fun. You were forced to be creative, right, with how you spent your time. And I wanted to get your thoughts on boredom, on what that might have, maybe like affected your kids, what boredom means to you, and how that might, like what does being bored do to somebody like you, somebody who wants to be creative, who is living unconventionally, and like what can you get out of just having the time to be bored and letting your brain wander where it needs to go?
Y'all just had to step out for probably the baby. Well, when you live on a farm, life is never boring. So that's one thing but yes, in suburbia, there are conveniences galore. There's so much to do to entertain you and your kids. You can do basically anything that you want. And in terms of entertainment, like it's, for me, if I want to go watch, you and I, you were saying that we watched that Avengers movie. If I want to go watch a movie, I got to drive an hour to be able to go to a movie theater. So it takes a little bit of a toll, but for boredom, yeah, we have chickens, ducks, a milk cow, and pigs, and now we have a fishing pond. So really, there's just not boredom here. We still have conveniences in terms of I got a projector that comes down in our living room. That's what our kids are doing right now. Is they're watching an afternoon show so that we can talk with you, and we kind of just try to figure that out. Now we also have our homeschool co-op, which means that we have we have friends, we have play dates and stuff that the kids still get to do. And for Kelly and I, it's having 5 kids, we're just never bored. And that's another thing. Like, if you have a lot of kids, you have more people built in, friends to play with. So does that answer you? Like, it's hard to say, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I was more going for like, everything that you're saying, watching kids, doing all the things with the animals and taking care of the land. It feels like work to me. Like, it doesn't feel leisurely at all. I do, just hanging out with a lot of our friends here. It's like taking kids sometimes is like the bane of your existence. Like, you want to escape from it. And I just think it's really cool that, in the way that you answered my question, that's totally not the case. Like, you are living life to its fullest by doing the things that you were meant to do, that you've designed your life to do, that I think God designed us to do, take care of our kids, take care of the land. It's not meant to be work. It's just that's just how things are. And it's really hard to like accept that. It's really hard to accept the fact that your life's mission is not to do what I do most days, which is like sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day, typing emails that I won't remember, and then coming home and not being able to be fully present with my kids. Not all the time, right? And that I'm really exaggerating there, but like I feel like that's the case for a lot of my friends. I have lots of friends who, because of the traffic situation, have to wake up at 5 a.m. They go to work from like 6 to 3 or 4, get back home at 6, have enough time for dinner and like an hour with the kids, and then have to go to bed, or at least the kids have to go to bed. Like, that just seems so unfair or so strange when I say it like that, but it's the regular thing. That's kind of the accepted norm, right? Um, I don't know. How long did it take for you to become who you are, to become someone who accepts, like, you know what, like, all this stuff. I mean, you're sweating, you're doing hard labor out there. Like, how does how do you find joy in that? How do you find that to not be something that you just are like, oh, I have to clean the cow poop today, or oh, I have to, do all whatever, and how do you teach your kids that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. So it all started. Now I just now got a YouTube comment. I think this morning we did a video. It was everything we built in the last 4 years on our homestead, or everything we built in the first 4 years on our homestead, actually. And there was a time, and it shows everything that we did and all of the hard work and all the sweat. And someone, sorry, this is how my brain is. So you might want to edit this out. But someone put in there the comment of, it must be nice to be privileged. I'm like, wow. They didn't know, like, and the video tells the story of how much work it was and everything we went through to be able to get to that point. So it's hard to say that it didn't take a ton of work. So this started back whenever I was in high school, and I started educating myself about residual income because I wanted to have a way to earn money today that pays me tomorrow and the next day and the next day. I have been researching that since I was 17 years old. And then, we found, a company that allowed us to do that. And it kind of aligned with our crunchiness. We were just now starting to eat more holistic, live holistic, stop using chemicals. We were doing essential oils, and we found a way to be able to build some residual income. And that was in 2011. And then from 2011 until 2015, whenever I, was working at the church, and I still did some video production. Actually, I still was able. I don't even know if Sermon Spice is even around anymore.
It still is. Yep.
Okay, so I need to email them because I haven't gotten a check in a while, and I think I ended up uploading videos there because I realized, I can do this work now. I can upload the videos there, and churches find value from it, and they pay $5-10 for a video, and I get a little bit from that, and I don't have to do the work anymore. So building that, it does take a long time. And then from 2015, whenever I stepped down from the church, and we went full time again, being self-employed, and then we got kind of broke a little bit, and I had to figure out how to right the ship. And I went back to video production, and I decided, hey, let's do wedding videos and a YouTube channel so that we can get our finances back in order. And then I did even more work, being able to stay up like incredibly late for like an entire month trying to figure out. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people live their life with, I can't do this because, like, I'll never move to the country because I have to work, because I'm in debt, because I'm taking care of my mom, because I'm disabled. We get all because I'm too old. Like, we get all of the excuses all the time. And our brain, I don't care about Elon Musk and all the crazy stuff, the AI, the most powerful brain, the most powerful computer on this planet is the computer in between your ears, our brain. And if you say, and it works based off of equations, if you say, I cannot do this, then you've answered the equation yourself. Versus if you trick your supercomputer in your head and you say, how can I do this dream that I want to do? For me, I got pen and paper and I wrote down, how can I make enough money to live in the country? How can I make enough money to buy land? How can I make enough money to quit my job and to be full-time working from home? When you do that, your supercomputer brain unlocks and it says, oh, I have an equation now. I have to solve it. The person did an equation for me and now I have to solve it. And I promise you, whenever you're doing the dishes, whenever you're riding in traffic, whenever you're in the shower, whenever you're doing mundane things, things are gonna start firing and you're gonna start having idea after idea after idea. And you got to find a way, get pen and paper or with your phone, whatever. You got to start writing all of those ideas down and never, ever, ever edit those ideas. And you can be able to like no bad ideas. And you just start brainstorming a whole bunch of stuff over a period of time. And then the next time you know, you like look up, you're like, wow, I can actually do this. I have some ideas. You know, I'm not just locked into this life. I can do something different. And so that's whenever someone says like it must be privilege, I'm like, it takes a lot of work to do something weird. You know, it does. It takes a whole lot of work to go against the grain, to swim upstream, to do something different in your life. That's why in school it's called an assembly. Like you go to the assembly. Like in public school, I call it government school. Because it is run by the state government. Sorry, it's called the assembly. It is based off of an assembly line. And if you don't plan your life, someone is going to plan your life for you. So we think very, very bizarre, but for us, that's how we've been able to live the life that we want to live.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, so I remember when Everett was graduating from Grace Preschool, they, did the ceremony thing where all the kids had to go up and like sing, and they were in the caps and gowns. I just remember Everett, not doing what everyone else is doing. So I bring that up because Gus graduated, my son graduated, for all of you who don't know, graduated from Grace Preschool this past May. It was like 45-minute ceremony. And they sang like 10 songs in the entire time. Gus was just, and it was hilarious. But I mean, I thought it was hilarious. My family was like, yeah. But in the back of my mind, I was like, that's right. You tell him, Gus, like you choose for yourself what you want to do up on that stage, like
absolutely
right. And like,
I mean, don't be disrespect, like
right. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing, but at the same time, it's like, I'm proud of you, son, for having the gall to do what you want. And but on the other side of that, like I also thought it would be so easy to squash that. It would be so easy to be like, Gus, why weren't you doing what everyone else is doing? But I'm choosing to step back and take the stance of, you know what? I'm going to encourage this independence. I might guide it, so that it does align with my values, with what would help him, in the world when I release him. But like, yeah, you go do your own thing. Like, I wish that schools maybe let you do that a little bit more. I wish that, oh man, I wish that churches let us like have this freedom a little bit more. And by that I mean like one thing I think is I love Alpha at Grace Fellowship. It's amazing. It's just a place where you can sit and just explore and ask any question, and and not be afraid. We actually have a teenage, like a high school group in the Alpha. And I remember one of the leaders coming up and telling me that, this teenager didn't feel comfortable at high school student ministry at RPM, in that environment, but at Alpha, they were comfortable. And so, I think about that a lot. I think about how do we create environments for people to not question and fight and argue against what they believe, but like Kelly said earlier, be willing to ask the questions and then arrive at that belief yourself. And I feel like what you guys do in your life and with your kids and how you raise your kids really encourages that.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi, I'm back. It was a baby situation.
Oh, I get that.
Sorry,
I was just telling Beau about how when Everett graduated from preschool, he wasn't doing all the dancing moves like all the other kids, and Gus did the exact same thing. So in the entire 45 minutes, he stayed in one position, arms crossed, furrowed eyebrows. And I want to hear you guys speak a little bit about encouraging that. I want to say independence, but it's also like a realization, and like what you're saying earlier, Kelly, about just being willing to question the situations you're put in, being willing to arrive at what everybody's telling you yourself, and why that's important, and how you guys raise your kids in that way.
And I'm not good at it. I'm always saying, like, do we need to be thinking about this? Do we need to be like testing more? Do we need to
I'll be
figure? Yeah,
like,
it's
planning
like,
an
it's not
entire school year out. We'll be halfway through. I can guarantee at least once a quarter, Beau's gonna come and he's be like, "How's that going? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Are they performing well enough?" I'm like, "Bro, step off."
So even the leader said, like, we are going to do something weird.
Yeah.
It's still hard. It's not,
So,
there's like a lot of baggage.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of temptation, even probably from a lot of people who are listening to this right now, to assume that we think one way is better than the other. Americans are very good at this. There's a right, there's a wrong, there's a left, there's a right. There's one way that at the end of the day totals up more points. And I think it's really tempting to think, what lifestyle am I going to choose so that at the end of the life, it totals up the most points? You mentioned Samantha, and Sam Root is one of my just nearest and dearest people on the planet. And something that she shared with me over a lunch a long time ago, we were talking about studying the Bible, and we were talking about the challenges of being Westerners studying this Eastern book, and the concept of both and. If anyone listening could hear this and be willing to enter into a life philosophy of both and versus one or the other, then you won't hear our talk as prescriptive or formula. We are absolutely just saying, there's another option. You get to opt out, and your opt out will look different. And some people won't be able to opt out because the system serves them better and they can serve best in the system. Do it. Do what's best for you. When I had Everett he was probably a year and a half old, there was this stirring in my circle of mothers who I was meeting who had elementary schoolers at the time, and they were homeschooling, and I wasn't homeschooled. I grew up as an Army kid. I moved a lot, and I loved my life. My mom assumed I would marry some Army guy and we would just live that life over, but as adults. That was never my expectation. I've not really been just follow the leader. I kind of just feel like, well, why can't I do what I want to do? And go figure, I'm raising kids who feel the exact same way. So even before we were homeschooling, I felt like that was probably going to be in our path. I just didn't know what that would look like. Certainly never imagined it to be like this. Beau is always futuristic, and I'm like, well, why don't we just enjoy today and celebrate what we've done so far? Not that I'm not ambitious. It's just I would rather enjoy it because I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. So when we did Grace Fellowship, and our kids went through preschool there. I loved it so much. I loved what they were getting. And one of the mom friends that I had, she was a teacher in the public school system, I was talking to her about some like the hard things that we were dealing with our kids, mostly just being first time parents and having this expectation of what it should look like and what the performance should be. Not just performing academically, but like performance, like how are they socially? And this mom was like, Kelly, I would absolutely not send your child to kindergarten next year. Why? Why don't you just wait? He'll probably do great in kindergarten. He'll probably do really good in first grade. And then he's going to hit second grade. And what I see, she was a third grade teacher. What I see in second grade is all these kids are just moved along. And very rarely are they mature enough to handle the social complexities and the academic rigor. She was like, well, why? Why are we pushing? This is a mom who is in this public school system. And I was like, you're right. And we wound up homeschooling a year sooner than I expected. I thought we'd spend, one more year. And then it came down to the exact same thing Beau said. I don't know that it is, do I want to sleep in as my priority? It was really more, which is very Kelly Brotherton, I don't want anyone to tell me where to be and when to be there. I want the freedom to sit on the couch and read Little Women in the morning to my kids. And so we do that a lot of mornings. And sometimes it's after one of my kids has just decided, hey, can I bake brownies this morning? It is not all brownies and Little Women at my house. Sometimes it is tears over math or frustration over reading, right? All of these same struggles, we just do them together. And I think that was our objective was we will look at in Katie all these huge corporations and our friends who were doing really well in them. And the things that they were being praised for was innovation, creative thinking, problem solving. And I was wondering, why are we waiting until college till we're implementing these skills? Because I didn't see that being praised unless it was falling within these lines and these parameters within a day. And I knew that our boys needed this run time. They needed like puppies to get out and get physical before we ever sat down. And what we notice now, 7 years later, is that we're more productive in 2 hours of schooling at a time than we would be in 7 hours of schooling, because we take these breaks to just go jump on the trampoline and play in cardboard. Like, I have imaginative kids who are problem solving, and the fear of comparison and knowing enough people who've graduated their kids through the same type of intentional freedom, right? Like, they're free to do their own things, but there's guidelines. There's a lot of freedom within those that I'm not worried about. Is he going to stand up in front of people and be frowny? Because that's not our end goal, is for you to be performative and fake it to make it. I'd rather you have these skills. And then when you don't need to wait until you're 25 to be hired as someone who's a problem solver. You can be 12 selling your stickers on our website, making your own money and trading stocks. Like, that's the life that we've built for our kids, because we want them to have the freedom to do whatever they want. They want to go to college. Yes, let's set you up to do that. But let's not set you up because that's your only option. Like, that is the absolute expectation. I don't know if it started with our generation, right? Beau's 41. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of weeks. And there was no question. Like, you go to be a sophomore and they're like, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to study? And then you meet someone and they say, when are you going to get married? And before you're even married, they're like, when are you going to have babies? And then when are you going to have more babies? And I just think that these are the wrong questions. These are the wrong questions to ask our kids. And I think that a lot of people fall in, especially career-wise, into the wrong careers because people were asking them the wrong questions, and they were set on this trajectory of, let's go be CPAs instead of firefighters and working for themselves. Not everyone's made for college. Not everyone's made to sit behind a desk. And in turn, right? Like this is very biblical. We're not all hands, we're not all feet, we're not all eyes, but we're made to work together according to our unique gifts. And our job has absolutely been founded in this principle of like asking the Lord, what's the gift that this kid has? How do I sow seeds in that space, or even just create an environment where the seeds the Lord is sowing in them can grow, right? So that's absolutely a philosophy that has freed me from the rookie parent moves that I made when I had one child. And I thought, even down to the very first months of his life, all my friends were having babies at the same time. And I was like, my baby isn't as chill as your baby. Why isn't my baby sleeping like your baby? Why is it like all these things that were just me comparing to a very non-standard standard? Like that was my experience, but I was definitely not the only person in the world experiencing these things. You have the sweetest little Gus who's also like, I sing this song, not because he doesn't know it, he just chose not to do it. And I think there's the long game of parenting, especially, but even for singles, even for non-parents, is this stupid idea that we have to teach everything by the time they're 18. Right? Or I have to be career pathed by the time I graduate college. No, I'm 40 years old. We have a YouTube channel. I sell essential oils and I teach my kids at home while we run all these digital products. Like, this is not even on a book when we graduated college. None of these jobs were. So to imagine that we're setting a trajectory other than principled living, teach our kids who God is, allow their hearts to be in an environment where they can encounter God and he can change their life. So into them with like healthy experiences and own that we are going to be wrong a lot of the times. And then let them see that vulnerability play out in a way that doesn't protect them or create a bubble around them, but fortifies them, because their life is going to be hard. Life is hard. Right? But we're going to do the best with what God's given us in the space that we have, and trust the Spirit to lead us as parents so that they see that in front of them and they can do the same thing. So I might have been on stage that same week with a microphone in my hand, and Everett would have been there, like not even turning around to face the audience. And that's okay. Like, I think it's a lot better. And hopefully it made you guys feel like, it's okay.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we're gonna have to wrap up soon, but I kind of maybe last point, talking about both, and you guys do live a very radical lifestyle, but a lot of the principles and the things that you do can't and don't apply to a lot of people watching this right now. But the idea, I think it's great to accept the idea that like the way you live your life is just as good as the way that I live my life, or this other person, or this corporate CEO kind of guy, and this like acceptance, this general love, I think, like unconditional love, like that's just an amazing thing. So from the 7 or 8 years since you guys have moved onto land, like what golden nuggets could you that would be applicable to someone who's living in Katy, Texas, someone who is not stuck, who is doing the 9 to 5 grind, who is free on the weekends but has to mow his lawn in the morning kind of thing, who does go to church every Sunday. What can you what golden nuggets can you shed on us for someone like that?
Yeah, I definitely I owe this. So I owe this to a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He's like a social media guy. He ended up saying this, and I was like, yes, like that's how I want. And this was years ago, and I just like and then now that we've done this through YouTube publicly, we've had a lot of people comment and email us and say, I regret not doing this years ago. I regret this. And I just, early in this process of really just life, I have committed to never living with regret. Like, I just don't want to do that. I mean, I think I was interviewed by Wayne, the worship pastor at Grace Fellowship, Wayne Kerr, and he interviewed me for his book, and he said, like, what would you tell your 20-year-old self if you could? I'm like, nothing. Like, why would I mess that up? Like, why would I? Like, because who knows if I wanted to change something when I was 20, I might not be living on my property. I might not have the same life I have. I might not have my kids. I might not have my wife. Like I might not, have my walk with God. Like all of the things could be completely different. So that's what I would say. Whatever it is that you're feeling pulled to do, and if just don't live with regret. Like I don't know, just don't live where you regret not doing something scary.
Especially if it's kind of a limit that you might not have placed on yourself. Kelly, I tell this to people all the time, but I'll never forget when we were about to move to Los Angeles. I was very comfortable. I was in a great place. I had a job at Grace Fellowship. It was a great job. I loved the people I was with. All of our families in Katy. We just had our baby boy, and everything was swell. And I felt this tug to just do something that quantitatively was really stupid. Right? Move to Los Angeles, join a band, have my income slashed by 2/3. But I felt it was a tug. It was a tug, and all the doors open. And I remember just so many people being like, "Why are you going to LA? That place is full of sinners," and all sorts of wacky things. And I'll never forget, Kelly, you sitting me down and looking me in the eye and saying, "Ben, if you don't go, who else is gonna go?" I tell people that all the time because it's like, not that I'm some sort of superhero or, moving as like a missional effort. It's just like, you know what? If the door's open and you've got a chance to do it, it's okay. It's okay to do it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fear that keeps us from doing things and keeps us still doing things. Well, if you ask that question, regardless of which decision you make, if it's coming from fear, it's the wrong decision. As believers especially, it doesn't mean you're unwise, but it's like, and who am I fearing in this? Is it because I think God would never send me to LA and start a band and give our family this life experience right now? I just feel like the conventional thinking is the route that we described earlier. And I think that's a bad route. I think it's a bad route to prescribe that to everyone. And in that, doing these things scared, what are we scared of? What are we afraid of? Is it just scary because it's this veneer, right? This this perception that, oh, I'm stepping outside the box, or, oh, this is too risky. Don't be dumb. Be smart. I would say we're pretty smart about the way we did this. But yes, if you held up on paper what our life is like compared to someone in Katy, and you're measuring it by this corporate standard, what we're doing is totally reckless. Like you're saying, why would we ever move out and give our kids, take them away from the best school district in all of Texas? Why would we do this? And the truth is, our measuring stick was never the corporate world. And if that is because that's where the doors are opening and it's right for you to do that, you do that. If it's to go to LA with your brand new family and have this whole new life experience, you do that. And look at you. Then God brought you somewhere else again. And in this new role, that here you are on the internet sharing these ideas that someone could actually take and say, okay, God, I heard this and there's a stirring in my heart. And what does that mean for me? Doesn't mean go to the country like the Brothertons. It doesn't mean go to LA like Ben and Powell. It means, God, you're using this to stir my heart, and let me talk to you and let me draw closer to you. Because if at the end of the life you tally it up and it wasn't drawing closer to God, my question is just what was the value that you're taking with you? So your value is knowing where you're headed, knowing this goodness of God in the land of the living, and not just because
we toil, or because at the end of the day we worked harder than anyone else. Like, there's so many stories in the Bible asking us, what do we choose? To sit at the feet. You can sit at the feet in the country, you can sit at the feet in Hawaii, you can sit at the feet in LA, you can sit at the feet all over the world, and the Lord will do the work and invite you into it. And I think that's that place where, like, yeah, God is infinitely more than we could ever ask or imagine, and he has that invitation for all of us into it. And it's going to look really different because the people who are listening to this have their own call to know God and to make him known in the way that he's wired them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, y'all are awesome. Love you guys. We need to, I definitely need to make it up to your land again. I'll never forget chainsawing all of the trees. Like, that was the first time I'd ever used a chainsaw in my life, and
Yes!
it was awesome.
Have you used one since?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I got some more that you can. I got some more that you can clear some more land and clear.
Building a fire that was like 6
yeah.
tall. That's what I remember.
That fire pit did not last.
Still do it.
Make a fire pit with cinder blocks. They break.
Oh no.
I'll learn that. Yeah.
Well, you guys are awesome. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining us at Grace at Night. Thank you to the Brothertons for giving your time away from the kiddos. I know they're all like probably jumping around and causing havoc in the other room, and we're just not saying that. But thanks again. I'll link your channel down into our description, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for having us, Ben.
Got it.